I always like to give people not just the science, but an actionable way to begin to implement this in their life. So if you're dealing with any cardiometabolic issues or blood sugar issues, this is a really valid way to begin seeing results in just 1 week. Welcome everybody. We are here, brand new Cabral concept. Excited to get into today's show. I talk a lot about intermittent fasting. I try to help people with healthy weight loss based goals, even using this for weight gain. Also, we talk about it in terms of overall wellness, how intermittent fasting can fit into your daily routine, and you can really customize it for you. But after you've kind of played around with maybe the 12-12, 14-10, 16-8, 1 meal a day, like whatever you're looking at, there is a healthier way to transition for the long run in terms of intermittent fasting. And the more research that I do, and the more I speak with my colleagues, as well as the hundreds of thousands of people that we've seen in our practice, it is becoming very clear there is a right way and a wrong way to do intermittent fasting in the long run. And I shared that very specifically on just an episode, I believe it was last week or the week before. Okay, it was 2 weeks ago, and it was on episode 2819. We can link that up for you here today. Today's episode is at stephencabral.com/2833. Again, that's stephencabral.com/2833. That'll be the 3 big takeaways, the show notes, the research, as well as previous shows that I believe would be helpful. So we talked about circadian intermittent fasting and how that really is the best way to do this. And a lot of it goes back to Ayurvedic-based thinking, traditional Chinese medicine, and much more. But more and more research are actually backing this up. And I wanted to share this with you here today. This is out of New York University Health. I'm going to link it up for you here today. And it shows that a study finds that eating meals earlier improves metabolic health. Now, it's interesting because they still allow for intermittent fasting, and not only do they allow for it, they encourage it. But like we've seen in our practice, there is a right way and a wrong way to do it, especially for people as they get older. Now, one of the things that I like to say is that whatever you see in the research, and whatever you find in the textbooks, practitioners are doing that typically at least 10 years before, if not 20 to 30 years. And then it starts to catch on, and then research is done on it to say, hey, can we validate this? And if so, with whom? And so when we come up with these different protocols we have in our practice, we do them because we know they work. However, we do know that in terms of conventional medicine, we understand that it may not be validated for years to decades into the future. And that is a frustrating part of natural health. But as I always say, nobody gets into natural health because it's easy. It's not. Most people become a natural health practitioner because of struggles they've had in their own past that they were able to overcome, and now they want to share that with others. My story is no different. I'm sure you're aware of my story. If not, I can share it another time as well. But 10 years of being sick, 10 years of debilitating illness, I finally found out how to heal. And it, of course, is my mission now to share that with others. But as practitioners, if you're recommending also intermittent fasting, let's start to move it to a healthier version. And I have lots of shows on this. All my intermittent fasting shows are at stephencabral.com/IF. And I really take an unbiased approach. Here's the research I want to share with you here now today. Eating more of one's daily calories earlier in the day may counter weight gain, improve blood sugar fluctuations, and reduce the time that blood sugar is above normal levels, a new study suggests. This was presented to the Endocrine Society's annual meeting on June 15th. The new report evaluated early time-restricted feeding, so ETRF. If you hear that, it just means TRF is always time-restricted feeding. So that's just the window as to which you can eat, right? And then E just stands for early. That's all. And this involves restricting calories to the first 8 hours of the day. Previous studies have found that this form of intermittent fasting may improve cardiometabolic health and blood sugar levels. What does that mean? Cholesterol, blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, and then, of course, type 2 diabetes. However, the team wanted to determine whether these improvements are related to weight loss or the fasting strategy. This was led by researchers at NYU Grossman School of Medicine. The work is the first to evaluate the effects of early time-restricted feeding on blood sugar and inflammation independent of weight loss. For their study, researchers compared early TRF, which means 80% of the calories were consumed before 1 p.m., to a usual feeding pattern of 50% of the calories consumed after 4 p.m. among the participants. The patients were randomized to early time-restricted feeding or unusual feeding patterns for the first 7 days and were changed over to the alternate arm for the next 7 days. Food was provided to meet the patient's caloric needs for weight management to determine the weight-independent effects of this strategy. Patients wore continuous glucose monitors, blood sugar monitors, throughout the study. Here's what they found. We decreased the time these individuals were having high blood sugar levels with just 1 week of early time-restricted feeding. The findings show that eating a majority of one's calories earlier in the day reduces the time that blood sugar is elevated, thereby improving metabolic health. I'll read one more paragraph and then we'll just break it down for you. They discovered the participants' weights were stable throughout the study. Early time-restricted feeding led to a decreased mean amplitude of glycemic excursion and decreased time above range, which is 140 milligrams per deciliter, compared to the unusual eating pattern group. The time in the range was similar between early time-restricted feeding and the usual time-restricted feeding group. Based on this data, early TRF may be helpful in a dietary strategy for diabetes prevention. So, I mean, this is pretty fantastic. Let's break this down now. So we know that 1 out of 3 people, and potentially 2 out of 3 people in the future, will have type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is now rampant. They had to stop calling it adult onset diabetes to now type 2 diabetes because so many children are getting it. And it's not just from being overweight, although the majority do seem to be a higher BMI than we would like, but they're having this dysregulated blood sugar throughout the day. And I saw when I was over and doing my internships in India and other countries as well, these are like new diseases that are now hitting the country, which is pretty remarkable in a negative way by seeing this in almost the first generation that it's happening to. And I was over in Beijing, China, working in a traditional Chinese medicine hospital as an intern. And I saw, because the doctors told me as well, this is the first generation of people in Beijing that are now overweight, obese as children. And they were horrified because their job is to keep people healthy. But they saw the more sedentary lifestyle, playing more video games, eating more fast food, which is promoted because it's a Western-based thing. And so we have to look at this. But now, these people didn't change their calories in this study. They didn't even necessarily have to change their food, but they began to eat the majority of their calories, 80% worth, before 1 p.m. So here's how we've done it for many years in our practice. We can have an 8 a.m. or so breakfast. We can have a 12 noon lunch, and that makes up the majority of your calories. And why this is important is because we've also found, I'm going to do another show on this, that the more active you are post-meal, and the research backed this up, postprandial glucose levels, the better you're able to balance your blood sugar. So it doesn't spike above those highs in blood sugar above 140 milligrams per deciliter as often. And it comes down faster than if you're too sedentary during the day. So you're most likely to be more active in the first half of the day. Hopefully you can get out, you can move, you can walk around, rather than having that big meal at night and sitting down. And also, when you look at my research and my podcast on the circadian rhythm intermittent fast, you realize that this is actually when the body knows and is ready to digest the food. So you might say, but how can I only eat 20% of my calories at night? Well, if you look at that, let's say you're eating 2,000 calories a day. Let's make this realistic. You can still eat 400 calories for dinner. Why is that important? Because 400 calories is still 400 calories. It's a lot of food, and that's 20% of your calories. So you're just eating 1,600 earlier in the day. Whether it's over 2 meals or 3 meals, that's up to you. And the 400 calories can still literally be, let's say it's 30 grams of protein at that meal. Okay, let's multiply by 4. That's 120 calories. Let's say you're eating 3 cups of vegetables at that meal. Okay, that's only about another 100 calories to maybe 150 calories. So now you're at 270, let's say. Okay, so now where do we go from there? We have 130 calories left. That is 1 tablespoon of fat, of olive oil, of a quarter to a half of an avocado, and that's your meal. You now have a handful size piece of protein, 3 cups of vegetables, or even more if it's just like a salad, and you're drizzling olive oil or smashing avocado into that as some fat. And you can also have low calorie to no calorie things as well, if you like a little apple cider vinegar or whatever it might be, or a squeeze of lemon. That's a real meal. That's a real dinner. And so I always like to give people not just the science, but an actionable way to begin to implement this in their life. So if you're dealing with any cardiometabolic issues or blood sugar issues, this is a really valid way to begin seeing results in just 1 week. I love being able to bring these studies to you because it also backs up what myself and many of my colleagues have been doing in our clinics or now global-based practices for many years. So yes, one, it's great to see the validation, but honestly, at the end of the day, I don't really care about that. What I care about is getting people results. So now I've seen something that works in my practice for decades, and now we have the science to back it up, which is exactly how we should be doing things. Do what works, make sure it's safe, do no harm, but then if we can, let's share with why it works, right? Let's share not just the hypothesis or theory, but the science now to back it up. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to do follow-ups. Feel free to write them in or put them in the comments right below. Thank you so much as always for tuning into the show. All the show notes, the study will be at stevencabral.com/2833. Do share the show with anyone you feel it could serve. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.